had to report to HMS Royal Arthur, which was Butlins holiday camp in Lincolnshire. And I remember going a very arduous journey to get to Skegness by train, and getting out of the train, and there was a chief petty officer all in his glory with his gold badges and his white leggings and belt. He came up to me threw a very smart salute, said, "Excuse me, sir, are you for Royal Arthur?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, run and get on that lorry." And that's my introduction. I had 10 weeks at Skegness. It was very cold and uncomfortable. All we did in that first period at Royal Arthur was to learn seamanship. I was destined to go aircrew, you see. And I hadn't been able to get taken on as a pilot, so I decided I'd go as an air gunner. And for 2 years I trained as an air gunner. I went all over the place for that. And then I got the surprise of my life, because having qualified as a telegraphist air gunner, I was called to see the commanding officer, and he said, "We would like to commission you, because so you'd be an officer." He said, "But unfortunately, there is no such thing as a commissioned air gunner." It came as a bit of a shock, did this, because it meant another session of training. And I went through more or less all the stuff that I'd done before, and eventually qualified as a pilot. I did the main pilot training in Canada, came back, I had a hernia, I had to go into hospital. I was a fortnight in hospital, and then I was sent home on a fortnight's leave. I was sent to Bootle, sort of as a holding place for people going through. And I saw all my old pals up there, passing one there and another, and I never got any help at all. And I was stuck in Bootle for 10 months, doing very little. In the evenings, I used to go into the mess and have a drink at the bar, and I got friendly with the first lieutenant. I found out that he was a member of the Magic Circle. When his secret was out, I didn't blackmail him or anything, but he felt his duty was to let me have as much leave as possible. And this is why, really, I'd met Molly. So I was able to ask the first lieutenant for the odd weekend pass so that I could go back down to Keighley to see her. So it was very convenient like that. But the sort of novelty began to work off. I asked them what was going to be my eventual role. And they said, well, they looked me up in the records, and I wasn't there. I disappeared into mid-air. There's no record of my career in the Navy at all. So I said, well, what am I going to do? And finally found my records behind a filing cabinet where they'd slipped 10 months earlier. Before I could do any more flying, I had to learn it all again. Managed to convince them that I was just about the right size for a Spitfire, which I'd always longed to fly. I had to bend my knees just a little bit to make sure when I was being measured, because you happen to be over 6 feet tall. And I went to Henstridge in Somerset, did my new flying training there, and then I got married. After a 3-day honeymoon, I had to go to Northern Ireland to do some air firing practice. Back to Henstridge, and lo and behold, VE Day came. I don't know whether I would have survived it. Very lucky that I came through without a blemish. Never fired a shot in anger.
I went to this stocking factory and I learnt to mend stockings, and which was very nice. And then when I got the chance, I went to Keighley Grinders. There were only a few women working there, and we had to learn to turn a screw on a lathe, and which was quite easy. And eventually I took over a man's job. After I'd been working, doing this man's job, I thought, I'll ask if I can have a rise, you see, in my wages. I think they were rather taken aback, and one of them said, "But Molly, think of the honour we've bestowed on you by giving you a man's job." It never occurred to me to question it until afterwards. Anyway, the union wouldn't help me because I was a woman, and eventually they did give me a little bit more, but there really was a lot of prejudice in those days, you know. It wasn't quite right. When I was trying to make my mind up, I know I disappointed my mother because she was delighted that I'd gone to the grammar school and everything. But I'd rather work and not have to rely on my parents, you see. We really knew very little about politics in those days, except what you saw when you went to the pictures, the newsreel. You know, we didn't take it in that things were building up in Germany during the 30s and what was happening. I didn't really want to go away from home. My father had been badly wounded on the Somme in the First World War, and like John, my elder brother, he'd already gone. I felt very sorry for my mother, and we were very anxious. We didn't realise how bad it was in Malta for him until, well, towards the end of the war. He was away 5 years. We weren't not quite sure what was happening. We didn't even know about the Holocaust. We didn't know anything about that kind of thing that had happened. The news was censored all the time, you see. I mean, like letters from Brother John, censored. They could only write so much, you see. It was horrifying learning about boys that we knew, so many who didn't come back. And remember, it wasn't until after the war that we learnt about the circumstances. But fortunately, in those days, families lived fairly near each other. So there would always be an aunt or a grandma around to help with the children. When I was expecting Peter, I left the Grinders, and sort of that was that. I didn't go back.